Icekit snuggled against Squirrelflight, her eyes half closed with content. Ashfur sat beside Squirrelflight, watching, while Squirrelflight gave her kid's ears a happy lick. Jayfeather sat back with a begrudging look to Squirrelflight. Icekit is healthy, Jayfeather grumbled. Squirrelflight seemed unbothered by her adopted son's attitude. Look at her eyes. Don't they remind you of the sea? Squirrelflight replied. I can't say. I've never seen the sea before, Ashfur said flatly. Squirrelflight nudged him. Don't be angry. Of course I'm angry. I've only just found out that those three, Ashfur indicated to Jayfeather, aren't my kids. You've been lying to me for moons. Icekit shifted slightly. I said I was sorry. This is all very wonderful, Jayfeather snapped, ushering Ashfur out of the nursery, but if you don't mind, Squirrelflight needs rest. Jayfeather gave Ashfur a slight shove out the nursery. Firestar and Sandstorm looked up as Jayfeather and Ashfur exited the nursery. How is Squirrelflight and the kids? Sandstorm asked. There's only one kid. There would have been more if Jayfeather had done his job correctly. Ashfur snarled. The other two were born dead. Jayfeather growled. Firestar rested his tail tip on Jayfeather's shoulder. I'm sure Jayfeather did the best he could. Firestar soothed. Well, the best wasn't enough. Ashfur muttered, padding away and sitting in a shadow in the corner of the camp. Brambleclaw watched the entire conversation with a dark, unreadable expression. Slowly, he stood up and entered the nursery quietly. Squirrelflight looked up from her kid, looking slightly surprised. How is the kid? Brambleclaw asked, his voice straining to keep from emotion. She's fine. I named her Icekit. Isn't she perfect? Squirrelflight purred. No. Yes. Brambleclaw's voice was strangely void of any emotion. Squirrelflight looked up anxiously. You're not upset, are you? Brambleclaw sighed. No. The kid is fine. Brambleclaw felt as if Foxclaws were tearing at his heart as the kid opened her eyes, which were almost identical to Ashfur's. He shivered at the sight of them, and forced himself not to look away. Still suppressing a scowl, Brambleclaw stormed out of the nursery. Icekit rolled out of the nursery, stumbling to her paws. A hunting patrol of her father, Ashfur, Dustpelt, Cloudtail, and Berrynose strode into camp, dropping the prey at the fresh kill pile. Icekit glanced at it momentarily, but shook out her ginger fur with gray specks. Ashfur. Ashfur, you promised to teach me a hunting crouch. Icekit bounced at his paws. You aren't going to catch any prey by jumping through the forest like that. Ashfur meowed sternly, although his whiskers twitched with amusement. Icekit held perfectly still and crouched, her tail still sticking high in the air. How about now? Ashfur reached out with one paw and gently tugged Icekit's tail lower. You can't wave your tail around in the air like that when you're hunting, and don't put all your energy in your front paws. Ashfur advised. I thought you said this was easy. Icekit argued. Nothing's easy. But it's worth it, and you get better the more you practice. Ashfur replied calmly. Why do you get mad at Squirrelflight sometimes? Icekit probed. I wait, what? You argue with Squirrelflight about lies and Leafpool and kids. What's all that about? Icekit responded in a very matter-of-fact voice. That's nothing a kid like you needs to worry about. Ashfur blinked. Besides, me and Squirrelflight are fine now. Icekit. It's time for your nap. Squirrelflight called from the nursery. But I'm not tired. Ashfur's teaching me a hunting crouch. Icekit whined. You need to sleep if you want to become a warrior one day. Squirrelflight poked her head out of the nursery. But I never see Jayfeather hunting. Icekit retorted. Jayfeather is a medicine cat. What about Leaf Pool? Icekit tried. She's a medicine cat too. Now, come on. It's getting late. Squirrelflight soothed gently. Icekit sighed and slipped back into the nursery, snuggling next to Squirrelflight and closing her eyes to sleep. Beyond the bramble walls of the nursery, Jayfeather watched silently alongside Lion Blaze as Icekit entered the nursery, both of them with thoughtful expressions. 5 moons later. Icekit sat proudly beneath the rocky ledge as Firestar took his place at the top of the high rock. Graystripe sat beneath him in front of the crowd of cats assembled to watch. Squirrelflight gave Icekit's ruffled fur a few nervous yet happy licks while Ashfur sat beside her, his fur fluffed with happiness and his eyes shining. Let all those old enough to catch their own prey gather here beneath the high rock for a clan meeting. Firestar's call echoed through the camp, although every cat was already waiting to watch. Imagine if I slip up or make a mistake, it would be in front of everyone. Icekit's thoughts were interrupted when she snapped back to reality and saw Firestar calling her up to the high rock. Icekit scrambled up and sat in front of him, her eyes wide as she stared up at the Ginger Tom. Icekit, do you promise to protect your clanmates even at the cost of your life? Icekit stared up at him in awe and hope as she mewed, I do. Then by the powers of StarClan, I give you your new name. Icekit, from this day forward you will be known as Icepaw, and Brambleclaw will be your mentor. Firestar announced. Ashfur's eyes darkened and Squirrelflight shifted as they watched Brambleclaw pad over to Icepaw and touch noses with her. I'll be a great apprentice. Icepaw whispered to him. He blinked his amber eyes and didn't respond, and Icepaw started to wonder if he had heard her. Icepaw. 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 Thoughts of her new mentor were quickly chased out of her mind as she beamed at her clanmates calling her new name. Surprisingly, Jayfeather had a thoughtful look instead of his usual snarky snarl. Icepaw turned to her parents as Squirrelflight licked her ears. We're so proud of you. I'll be a great warrior. Icepaw promised. I'm sure you will. Ashfur purred. Icepaw turned around and saw Brambleclaw watching her from across the clearing, an expressionless mask clouding his emotions. I wonder what's going on in his head. Icepaw copied the crouch Brambleclaw had shown her and glanced up at him hopefully. You need to stretch your front paws more forward. Icepaw sighed and stretched her front paws out. No, not that far out. Icepaw struggled not to lash her tail in frustration. Why does it matter if my front paws are an inch forward or not? When you are hunting, you are feeding the clan. If you can't take that seriously, perhaps you shouldn't be a warrior. Icepaw gaped at him, shocked. Was he really suggesting her to give up her dream of being a warrior? I want to help my clan. Icepaw wondered if that was slight sympathy showing in his eyes. Some cats have to train harder than others. Icepaw stopped crouching and stared up at him. But I'm loyal. And I do train hard. Brambleclaw's expression shifted as she stared up at him without blinking. I know. Let's try going out and hunting. Remember what I taught you about the hunting crouch? Brambleclaw added. Okay. Icepaw bounced after Brambleclaw and looked around the forest. Stay quiet. Brambleclaw whispered as he crept forward. Icepaw froze suddenly. A soft crackle of nuts cracking together caused her to angle her ears to the right, where a plump squirrel was seated. Brambleclaw nodded at her, then took a step back. He's going to let me catch it? I can't let him down. Icepaw slid into the hunter's crouch and placed one paw slowly forward. She slipped the next paw ahead, careful not to snap any branches or cause any pebbles or nuts to tumble. Just a few fox lengths away now, almost there, just 3 tail lengths away now. Icepaw lunged, unsheathing her fangs and reaching for the squirrel. It bobbed its furry red tail, then darted beneath Icepaw, who reached underneath her belly to reach it, but slipped on her own paws, crushing the squirrel beneath her. The squirrel struggled, but Icebaw's hind legs had landed right on top of it. Well, that's one way to catch prey, Brambleclaw noted, although his whiskers were twitching with amusement. Icebaw finished off the squirrel, then picked it up happily. I caught it. You crushed it? Brambleclaw corrected. It's still caught, and no cat can argue with that. Maybe I've invented a new way to catch prey. Icebaw meowed happily. Let's go take it back to camp. Icebaw struggled to drag the fat squirrel all the way, but it was worth it when she saw the looks on her clanmates' faces. I knew you'd be a great warrior, Ashfur purred. Brambleclaw's expression slipped into something that looked alarmingly similar to a scowl, before the look was quickly wiped away and his emotions locked beneath his amber eyes. Icebaw blinked in surprise at him, but was distracted when she spotted Squirrelflight talking solemnly with Firestar. What's wrong? Icebaw nodded at where Squirrelflight and Firestar were sitting. Oh, nothing. Ashfur told her a little too quickly. I'm not a mouse brain. Icebaw put the squirrel down on the fresh kill pile, pausing when she noticed Jayfeather and Lion Blaze staring ominously towards her. Why is every cat acting strange? Jayfeather's always strange. Ashfur snorted. Icebaw opened her mouth to respond just as Squirrelflight and Firestar padded over. Icebaw, Firestar began, have you ever had any strange dreams? Icebaw blinked in surprise at him. What? Every cat has weird dreams. Squirrelflight blinked in slight sympathy to Icebaw. Are you sure being a warrior is the best way you want to help your clan? Icebaw gaped at Squirrelflight, not even understanding her at first. You mean, be a medicine cat? And spend the whole day sitting in a stuffy den looking at leaves? You could just try it. Firestar suggested. Why are you punishing me? Look what I caught. I'm good at being a warrior. Icebaw pointed her tail at where her squirrel was positioned proudly at the top. This is not a punishment, Icebaw. Squirrelflight placed her tail tip on Icebaw's shoulder. Just try it. But. Icebaw stared at Squirrelflight. How could such a massive change have been about to happen to her without any warning? And most of all, why me?